Mwiko mwiku mwiko mwiku mwingi wa Kamiriithu mutiuke tunyitane
I was born in Nairobi, in Eastleigh, and I grew up in Eastleigh and went to school in Eastleigh, St. Teresa's Boys' School. I'm 8 years old, so it was all a bush forested area there. In the 50s, the Mau Mau used to have one of the camps over there. Later on, the Nubians came after the war, Second World War, and now, it's one of the largest slums in Africa. I went into this St. Teresa's Boys' School, which was run by Irish missionaries, and our syllabus, our exams were set in, and we sent our papers to England. So this was a par excellence British colonial education. We studied the history, the geography, everything of Great Britain. And we wrote exams on this. So my mind, you can imagine, leaving school after at 16, 17, completely, I was, apart from my brown skin, I was a white man inside. Then I joined the University of Nairobi in the 60s. This was the prime of nationalism. At that time, nationalism, we talked about not as decolonization, but as Africanization. So everything was happening was Africanization. Ngũgĩ Wa Thiong'o, who has played a major role in my life, I used to go and listen to his talks and lectures because he was fighting to change the Department of Literature, which was then called English Literature, into the Department of Literature, from the Department of English Literature. So it was very interesting to watch. And I was in the department of, which was heavily influenced and staffed by Scandinavians at that time. So it was the Department of Architecture, Art, and Design. And our first years were all the three subjects we had to do. It was, I think, based on Scandinavian syllabus. Then later on, I chose to do product design. And then later on, I went to Copenhagen to the Academy of Design, Art, and Architecture for 2 years. But it was more of a reading period, and I could do whatever I went. But my mind was drawn towards ethnography, what's called ethnography, third world objects, really. And I spent a lot of time in ethnographic museums in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and also in the folk museums. So I was attracted always towards the people. Okay, when I came back, I joined the Institute of African Studies as a junior research fellow in material culture, which are objects. And that's where I met Ngugi. Institute of African Studies was a part of the university. So, of course, we had a common staff room. We used to common cafeteria. And Ngugi and I were talking, and we had common things like how to work with, or how to get knowledge from, and how to work with what he usually called peasants and workers. Okay. By the way, in Scandinavia, I did get heavily influenced by Marxism. At that time, the academy was very much on the left. Vietnam war was going on, and and there was a lot of social architecture and architecture for the people. which was going on, this kind of things. And I was actually interested in design for the people and design out of the people's cultures and knowledge. I got my PhD, and I trained as an ethnographer, but in arts also, and education in the arts. And I saw, so when I was there, and I worked a lot in the field. I worked with many ethnic peoples of Kenya. When I joined the University of Nairobi and as a research fellow in African Institute of African Studies, I also was lecturing in Department of Design. But then soon they threw me out because I could not follow the syllabus that was so colonial to my own mind. And then I moved on to the National Museums of Kenya, where I was the head of ethnography for Kenya. And then I did a lot of exhibitions and research. Now, I changed my research style to participatory research. I would now do research with the people because I learned that there's so much that the people can tell you. Ngũgĩ Wa Mĩriĩ was very important because Ngũgĩ Wa Mĩriĩ was actually a teacher, and he gave me a book of I never heard of Paulo Freire, but he gave me a book on Paulo Freire to read, and then I think he was mentioning Augusto Boal. Now, Augusto Boal he started the theater of the oppressed in Brazil. But early on, from 1940s, Indian anti-colonial freedom movement always had street plays, and the street plays are still going on. Now, Ngũgĩ Wa Mĩriĩ somehow was influenced by his studies at the Institute of Adult Studies in Kikuyu, which was a part of the university, and he was fresh out of that and full of this Paulo Freire and Augusto energy. There was the catering team. There was, of course, there was the theater, the actors. There was the stage people looking after the stage and the stage properties. And I was in the production team. Now, my work with my team, I was not the leader. In fact, nobody was the leader. We all worked together. Well, okay, my work was to design the costumes, which I did. And secondly, to design the theater with the help of the team. Now, what was great was it's actually the carpenters and the craftspeople of Kamiriithu who came forward to design the theater. We tried to work out and see what a theater should be. Now, mind you, they had no experience. At the most, maybe they'd been to, we talked about it, to the stadium and watch the football matches from there, you see. But I had, of course, from my academic background, I had this idea of a Greek theater, amphitheater, right? And which would be sloping and all that. And so I drew and all that and showed it to them. Hakuna kazi. I mean, they could not understand, they could not get it. Then I got an idea, took a matchbox and started working with matchsticks. In the 60s, actually, late 60s, in the Department of Design, Architecture and Arts, we worked a lot with sticks, to build models. Yeah, model. At that time, there were no computers or things. We just built models. So So I designed the theater, and then, oh, what a great discussion we had on the theater. One, where will the stage be, and where will be the people sit, and what and what not. And the important thing was, where will the sun be? You see, they came from farming communities around. The sun was important for them. Yeah. And also the timing of the day and the path of the sun. Right. And yeah, okay, there's some, I don't know, some professionals from Nairobi, architects, who came, but they were totally confused, I think, where to start and what to do, because it was nothing there, and no resources, nothing. And they needed skilled people, like, skilled carpenters, and, kind of. But we had carpenters, but they would not make the best furniture for a sitting room. They would make kind of juakali term things. Yeah. So it was the team of Kamiriithu carpenters and craftspeople who actually worked and conceptualized the theater out of the model, which they discussed and worked on and whatnot. The model I made had no stage, but then we did put a stage later on. Okay. I just put the seats and this and this, and this is how it would be. I don't know if I put the matchbox there as a stage. I saw one day Ngugi just brought a truck full of this material, and then we needed nails and hammers, and this one carpenter I talked about, who became the team leader, he started measuring. Now, we didn't measure with measuring tapes. They measured with steps, and that's where they started putting the pillars down. You see, one pillar here, these pillars on which would sit the benches, the flat banks. Okay, one here, one there, and we started measuring, and then in steps. So we had the smallest pillar in front, the second pillar a little bigger, a little taller, the one after that a little taller, one after that a little taller. So there were already steps being done there. Okay, and then so many people came with the hammers and the nails, and they started beating the planks on top of the pillars. We didn't go into how the play would be on the stage. We just made the stage, but we had been seeing the rehearsals, and in fact, the actors were first asked to go on the stage. They were scared because of falling down. You came on top, and there was nothing. Looking down, and how do you go up like this? And all there was the Ngaahika Ndeenda has a lot of dancing, yeah, dancing and singing. So they were, yeah, and they never danced so high up in the air before. They said. For them, the space was different. Yeah, they didn't conceptualize the stage, the little stage, as space. Once they start dancing and all, they let it go. It was like in the village square, which has no boundaries. The play adapted itself, and the actors adapted itself to whatever we put it up before them. I know lights were brought in, some lights were just at the side. We had an electrician working on the lights. And I don't remember if he had a megaphone, because the acoustics was fantastic. Just the silence of the audience. And the silence was In fact, it was hemmed in by the tension, because soon after the audience started sensing what was happening, and the actors themselves also realized, to say it very clearly, that this was a political play. And they knew, and they came from the experience of the Mau Mau time, what the government was capable of doing. So the tension started climbing. And we know the special branch started increasing in the audience. And the people exactly knew who was the special branch because of the community, right? And then, of course, I could not make out, but the actors and the backstage help would tell me, "Hey, Somjee, naona huko, that guy." We'd be peeping through there were these panels. There was the beauty of the songs, the dances, the language, and there was also the fear. And remember, we were living under the oppressive rule of Kenyatta, and they've had many instances before. And mind you, Larry was not too far away from Kamiriithu. Larry was one of the most horrendous massacres in the history of Mau Mau. Yeah, they were speaking to themselves, and they were speaking to the authorities. They were like telling off the authorities. I made the costumes, and but I researched and styled it on the Kikuyu ethnic dress. Yeah, which I think it's called muduru, and shuka. Yeah, and I tried to do the ornaments and the and the bangles and all, but it was too expensive, to get this, and there was no time to work on, and we couldn't buy this in bulk. So I tried to use unsuccessfully. I tried to use because Kikuyus at that time used to wear brass. You see, so I got some sisal, and I sprayed it with these colors, the brass colors, the shiny, what do you call, like neon brass colors, yeah. But the actors rejected it. In a way, they wanted to be real also. They didn't want anything artificial, yeah, actually. And even the dresses, and many of them were, of course, Christians, yeah. So the dresses went on like that, showing the shoulder, and some mutumia, the ladies, they wanted a sweater or something to wear under that, so their arms and all would not show, yeah. So we had to persuade, and just I was so I wanted it to be so perfect, I just wanted them to look beautiful, even with their hangi. Hangi are these huge bead rings that the Kikuyus wear. But I didn't always succeed because it was reality for them. For me, I was putting up a play there, putting out costumes for the play. So it was a play for me. For them, it was a reality. The director Kimani, he wanted a real gun. Can you imagine? So we had a real gun there, and then it would shoot, and then that's when the audience would bah, and then they would be really quiet, stunned, careful that this was something very serious. They thought then by the end, although there was a lot of dancing and singing, they knew it was a very serious play. There's no doubt about it. So the writers really achieved that. And you know what? Who's going to bring the real girl? So they all looked at Somjee because I'm an Asian. I come from town. So they told me to bring the real gun. Now, Asians don't keep guns in their houses. So, but some of them were very good. He told me, I said, I don't have guns. I don't know where to get gun from, and why are you looking at me? To bring a gun. And I didn't even have a car at that time. I was just using the matatu. But then one of them said exactly where I could get the gun from. It was from an arsenal police arsenal in Hurlingham. So this was a task. Everybody was next weekend. Everybody was expecting me to come with a gun. So I went to the arsenal, and I wrote a. Ngugi asked me to write a poem about it, so I wrote a poem about it, how it was. I go into the arsenal and I said I want a gun. For what? I said for a play. They said what play? There were these policemen that looked like thugs, and then. Then I changed my story. I said, better not tell them the Kamiriithu play. I told them, for an Asian play, a religious play in one of the temples in Gara. So they gave me the gun, but I had to give my kitambulisho. I leave my kitambulisho there. There were some questions. I had to fill in a form, and they gave me the gun. I didn't know what to do with it, but I was carrying a backpack, and I had a kind of a scarf. So I wrapped it in the scarf, and after leaving the police station, I put it in in my rucksack, and I was walking and taking public means. Then I had to take a matatu from at that time it was in the River Road, just below this hotel, Supreme Hotel over there. So I took a matatu from there to Kamiriithu, to Limuru, because at that time there were no matatus to Kamiriithu. And from Limuru, I walked through the shambas. I would bring the gun there. They would shoot. Then Saturday and Sunday. Sunday, I would take the gun back. Monday, I had to return it. And then the same scenario next weekend. Ngaahika Ndeenda had a lot to do with Mau Mau. The songs were Mau Mau, The songs were patriotic about the land and the land grabbing. Mau Mau was the Land Freedom Army first. So that time I understood the power of the land, to the people. And of course, many had lost people. In the mid-1970s, while working with workers and peasants who were the backbone of the rural theatre in Kamiriithu, I was confronted, as it were, by community-based knowledge, creativity, and the power of collective intellect vis-a-vis the Western academy I was trained in. While setting up museums of peace during the conflicted times of the 1990s, I used the Kamiriithu methodology I remember. Colonial knowledge is always from the top. It is made and then it is brought down for the people to digest. But anything that is come from the bottom up, when the colonials have to adjust, and the coloniality-minded elites of Kenya right now, it is always decolonization. When something is coming from the bottom up, it challenges the top down. The top down is always putting the authority keeping the authority in place. So it was decolonialization in that way of knowledge.
Ngũgĩ wa Kamĩrĩĩthũ mũtiũke tunyitane moko tũthondeke itũũra mwĩkũ mwĩkũ mwĩkũ